Hello, I am Iris Angellys, and I am the author of Passion to Thrive, Reclaim Your Life's Potential, Purpose, Passion and Power, which is mainly a women's empowerment book, but could be applicable to men as well. And my new book is called Your Body is the Portal to Your Soul, and that is a book that helps you go from a place of maybe ambivalence, maybe of hate about your body, to actually understanding what your body is trying to tell you, and a place of love and respect and gratitude for your body, so that you can live the best life you possibly could. Because if your body isn't healthy, if your body isn't happy, that's not going to happen. So that's also an empowerment book, and that one's for everyone.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Living the Next Chapter. I have a great guest with me today, and you've already heard her voice at the beginning of the podcast. Iris is with me today. We're going to be talking about her books, plural, and all the great things that she's up to, and her author journey. So much to talk about. And for me, it's 4 p.m. in the afternoon. My guest, it's quite early in the morning where my guest is. So without further ado, Iris, welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much. So lovely to connect with you, Dave.
I don't think I would have that bright a smile at 6 a.m. I got to be quite honest with you. It's great to have you here.
Special appointment today.
See, you didn't hit snooze on the alarm clock. You're like, oh no, I'll get up. Thank you for doing this. Can you tell everybody why it's 6 o'clock where you are and why it's 4 o'clock where I am?
It's because I live in Australia, about 3 hours away from Sydney. And we are in a very different time zone from most of the rest of the world.
Which makes you unique, right?
Well, yes, thank you.
And special, and oh yeah. Okay, so tell me, I've never been to your country. I would love to come to your country. If I came there today, and I flew over there, well, it'll take a long time. Where would I go? What would you say is like first thing out of the airport? Where should I go? What should I see?
Keep in mind that Australia is the same size as the United States.
Right.
So a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and it just means covering ginormous distances.
Right.
So that's the first thing. So it depends on what you like, of course. Like if you were to land in Sydney, your first port of call would have to be the Opera House and Circular Quay. That's a really, really magical place. It's also very busy, obviously, because it's right in the middle of the center of the city. But that is a magical place. I think I'm actually from Denmark originally, so I think it took me a couple of years to get used to the idea that I was living in the country with the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. And then I would recommend you take a ferry across to Manly, which is a suburb that's like straddles the harbour and the ocean. So there's a really, there's a beautiful beach, and you can do a beautiful walk up to a headland, and it's really chill vibe there, and good food, and like the actual ferry trip itself was really quite nice. And something else that's fun to do when you're in Sydney is to catch a ferry that goes up the Parramatta River. So you basically get to see Sydney from the inside with no traffic, which is really lovely. But I'm not in Sydney. I've moved north of Sydney. One thing I will say about the New South Wales coast, which is where I live, is that it really doesn't matter where you go. It's always going to be beautiful, and it's always going to have magnificent beaches and beautiful landscapes, and it's very different from one section to the next, but it's literally all beautiful. So that's one of the things that I love about where I live. And then
you came from Denmark, though, right? So
yes.
What did you leave behind coming from Denmark? That's another beautiful place.
Yes, it is. Well, I've lived in quite a few different countries in Europe. So I lived in Denmark till I was 10, and then I moved to Spain with my mum when I was 10 and lived there till I was 19. Then I went back to Denmark for a year, and then I lived in UK, where I studied and practiced chiropractic. And then I came out to Australia when I was 25.
Okay.
So I'm just behind a continent and my family and, everything that had been relevant to life until that point in time, I guess, to start on a whole new adventure. So, yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I love it. Okay, yeah, because when you talk about the size of a country, people say, when I tell people I'm from Canada, they're like, "Oh, do you know George?" I'm like,
No.
Canada's quite large. It's a pretty big place. I might know George, but probably don't. So
Yeah.
it's funny that people just have a perception of how big the place is. So I'm glad you gave the comparison to the U.S. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, Denmark is tiny. I think Denmark's got a population of about 6 million, which is, kind of Sydney and surrounds. And, you can't travel for very long without hitting a border or some water in Denmark. So it's a really big contrast in that way between those two countries as well.
Yeah. Beautiful. And my wife's family's from Holland. So, we have a lot of family and friends over there. So it's interesting to kind of get that perspective of a different place than what we're used to here in North America. So I love it.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's great to have you on the podcast. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your author journey. Where did this start for you where you thought, I have a few minutes in my calendar. I think I'm going to become an author. How did this all start?
It's, it kind of did happen that way, actually. Like, I've always, loved words and language. Like, I grew up speaking quite a few of them, European languages. And, one of the things that does, it kind of give you a sense of there's some things that you can express in one language in one particular way that you can't quite translate into another language. It's almost like, depending on what language you speak, there's a certain range of experience that you have available to you that might not be quite the same if you're in a different language. I was privileged because I grew up speaking all these languages. So if you learn a language before you become a teenager, you can get the emotional content of the language, not just the kind of mechanics of the language, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I've always written, like, once I moved to Australia, every year I would write a yearly newsletter to say, this is what's been happening and this is what I've been experiencing, and then sending it back to family and friends, in the old country.
Mm.
And I'd read a book by somebody else, and for the first book, she had kind of written, a little bit about a few different archetypes. And I was thinking about this, and then as I was thinking about it, it was like these things started dropping in. It's like, oh yeah, I can see this archetype happening. So the first book's about archetypes, right? And then I wrote that down, and then the next thing would drop in, and I wrote that down, and then the next thing dropped in. I'm like, hey, I'm onto something here, So it literally felt like this book was kind of, fluttering around in space, going, okay, who is going to put me into, onto paper, basically.
Nice.
So like, I love writing. It's such a nice process. And then I wasn't telling anybody other than my husband that was writing a book, because there's so many people who are writing a book, and 10 years later, they're still writing this book. Mm-hmm. But I did tell a patient of mine, and she said, oh, well, if you want to interview somebody for your book, then I will be happy to, do that for you. And she's an incredible woman. So then I ended up interviewing 7 different women of different ages about different aspects of their lives. And they all had something unique in their life experience that they'd, overcome and developed into, like, really owned their power and really, knowing their worth. So that's woven in between the chapters of the book. So it makes it a very rich experience, because it's not just, here's what I think. It's also, here's what other women think and have experienced. So that came together very organically. And I think from the time I started typing to the moment of release, the book was actually about a year.
Wow.
So with this next book, I was literally, kind of getting little snippets of things and again, writing them down. And then one day I thought, well, I've got a lot of snippets here. I should look through them, thinking I would write one book, but it turns out actually I've had enough material for 2, and they're quite different and distinct. So I thought I'd go with the one that seemed the easiest to tackle to start with. And again, that same process is happening. Like, I decided, okay, that book is now finished. And then the next snippets are dropping in for the next book. So it looks like there's a 3rd book in the process of being made. And like I said, the writing is the fun part, because it's almost like as I write things down, there's this next insight that wants to make its way into me. And it'll often happen while I'm driving, or when I'm walking on the beach, or, having a shower, something else random where your mind just kind of wanders and you're fairly relaxed. Oh, I just heard myself saying I'm relaxed when I'm driving. So, so it's such a beautiful process, you know, such an easy way of being creative. It just flows. Yeah, I really love it. And then, you know, the editing and all that stuff can get a bit tricky.
Yeah.
But you know, it's also, I have a really beautiful editor. So I know that once she's finished with it, it's going to be something that's not just meaningful, but it's actually going to be good to read as well. She cuts out all my Angellys and my, so's and all
right.
my, you know.
Yeah. From a podcaster point of view, I hear them all when I talk. I'm like, oh, there they are. There they are. There's my ums. There's my ahs. There's my things. Right?
Ain't that the truth? Yeah.
Yeah. It's when you put yourself out there, you get some pretty good feedback and a good snapshot of who you are and how people see you. So it's exciting. And so you have a great relationship with your editor. How did you find your editor?
She came recommended by a friend who had also written a book. Yes. I've got a couple of friends who've written a book. So this was a friend who had also written a book. She's written a children's book, and she sang her praises, and she's phenomenal.
Nice.
Yeah.
Excellent. Love it. Okay, so talk about the power of having a book. Has this opened a door for you, having a book now too? Does it give you opportunities that you wouldn't have if you weren't an author?
I haven't given that thought before. I guess so. I wouldn't be talking to you right now if I hadn't written a book, for example.
You wouldn't be up at 6 o'clock in the morning talking to me.
I wouldn't be up. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, opportunity as much as with this second book, I've actually created a course to go with it. So the opportunity that I am creating, or what I'm offering, is people who are not in my local community, so they can't come and see me in person, can come and experience what it is that I'm talking about. And that means that I have an opportunity to reach many more people potentially across the globe with the work that I do, rather than being confined to a small space. Like the one-on-one is beautiful and brilliant, but it's not very efficient in as far as empowering more people goes. And that's my thing, you know, like my heart sings when I see people thrive and step into their worth and claim their magnificence and be empowered to live a life that's in alignment with their soul. And that's why I do everything I do, pretty much. Yes. So that's the opportunity that's opening up. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the people you serve. Talk about your clients and kind of what it's like to work with you. Cause I love how a book can open that door. Somebody can read and get to know you and who you are through your book. And then that just opens the door to say, I would like to work with you. Tell me what does that feel like if I sign up and say, I want you in my life. What's that look like?
Well, I might have been saying something a little bit misleading there. So I'm a chiropractor in my other job, in my day job.
Yep.
So that's kind of what I was referring to. And basically I'm drawing from not only my own experience, but I'm drawing from my experience as having served, I think I worked out the other day, there's probably about 20,000 different chiropractic patients, in the last nearly 30 years. Wow. So I'm drawing on their experience and seeing, you know, what's working for them. I do run workshops as well that can be online. So that's one way of connecting with me. Yes. And I was offering those as one-on-ones as well. But again, I'm kind of stepping out of that a little bit. Who knows? I might offer it again down the track, but nice. Right now it's the group thing that's on the cards.
Beautiful. So tell me about the newest book. Give me a little bit more information about the writing process for this and kind of your hopes for everyone that's going to read this book. What are you hoping they're going to come away with?
So my observation as a chiropractor and also just a member of society is that most people at best have a neutral relationship with their body and at worst hate their bodies. And, you know, our bodies are this gift that nature has given us so that we can experience this life. And our bodies know how to navigate 3D physical reality, right? They're uniquely equipped to know what it is they need in the way of food and exercise and rest and, water and affection and community, and they know exactly what they need to thrive. And they try to tell us this with sensations. And the more we ignore them, the more the sensations get hard to ignore. Yeah, the stronger the signals get. And most people don't understand what those sensations mean. So then they get frustrated and kind of go, well, why doesn't my body, let me do X, Y, Z? In fact, I think most people don't even feel their bodies properly. They don't really live in their bodies, right? Most people kind of live from the eyes or from the head up and experience the world just through their eyes and through their hearing and sounds, possibly even smell and taste. But that's kind of as far as it goes, so that they kind of live in their minds. And our bodies are amazing because they can run autonomously fairly well. Like they do that every night when we sleep. They do that a lot of the time too. Like I think everybody who drives a car has once driven from A to B and then got to B and had no recollection whatsoever of actually the drive, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And that's kind of our bodies just doing what we've asked them to do without a whole lot of input from us, So the other option we have is like sitting in the car and actually perceiving everything that's going on around us, the landscape that we're driving through, or, how the light falls on a particular building or whatever, So that's the two ways we can live our lives. So the more we step out of our bodies, the more we don't live in our bodies, the more we ignore our bodies, the more our bodies are kind of left to run by themselves, but they need a certain amount of resources, they actually need our presence so that we can work with them cooperatively or live in them cooperatively. And, when we get sick or when we get tired or that's a signal from the body saying, I need you to be present for me and I need you to do X, Y, Z. And what happens is most people kind of feel betrayed by their bodies and then they go and take pills or whatever. So what this book is intended to do is to allow the reader to understand in how many different ways you can understand the body to be. So for an example, my favorite one is probably it's a cherished pet. If you have a cherished pet, what do? You make sure it has a nice place to sleep. You make sure that it gets a run amount of exercise and it gets good food and you give a lot of pats and attention. If that's the only thing a person takes away from our book and they start treating their body that way, their life is going to change, right? Because suddenly it's like, oh, I have this little, like our body is the only creature that we're guaranteed we will be, stuck with for the rest of our lives, right? Everybody else can go, but our bodies are going to be with us. Why not love this little intelligent, vibrantly alive, sparkly, fun, curious creature and have a really good experience through life together than just kind of, waiting for the next weekend or the next holiday or the next, beer, and we get to the end of our lives and we haven't really been present for any of it, So it's an empowerment in the way of just taking a completely different view of the body. And that's something that's happened because of the work that I do. Like I've understood what it is the bodies are trying to tell. And then I've served as an interpreter and saying, look, if you do this, your body will feel a lot better. And if your body feels good, then you and your body can have a really fun, interesting, pleasant, exciting lifetime, whatever it is that feels good to you, If your body is happy and thriving, then your soul can do what your soul came here to do. You can't really do that in a sick body,
Right. And it's interesting that you mentioned that people will pursue medication to quiet the voice of your body talking to you and try to, push that down. And your body's trying to send you a message. You're like, well, I'll just take some medicine and, I'll just squash that. It's like, maybe if you had paid attention to that message, you would be living in a different space, I guess. Your body would be, you're listening to who you are and learning the lessons that your body's trying to tell you. I love that perspective.
Exactly right. Okay. Yeah.
It just seems that in our culture that medicine just seems to be the way to do it. You just take a pill and you're good. You go see your doctor. Yeah, here's a prescription. Okay, next. And I'm like, I'd rather deal with the source than the symptom.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what my perception of that.
Yeah. Our culture is a long way from being a body and human friendly place. Like the way we've arranged the culture, it does not make sense if you look at it kind of from a detached point of view. Like why should most people be grinding away at something they don't like to do for the sake of the evenings and the weekends and the holidays? Which when you then get there, you kind of don't even know what to do with because you haven't had any practice of actually being joyful,
Right. Yeah.
And I remember watching this movie once on a long haul flight, and there was this young couple, and she was saying, oh, well, this is just after the war came down in Germany. Oh, well, everybody will have a 4-day work week, and, all these computers are going to do most of the work, and everybody will have all this leisure to, really thrive and be happy. And, it hasn't quite panned out that way. And there's actually no reason why it couldn't have, so we need to reclaim our culture in a way and say, actually, my health and my well-being, physical, emotional, spiritual, mentally, is important. I could contribute more if I'm well on all those levels. Instead of kind of going to work, earning a ton of money, and then spending it on something that doesn't actually give you joy anyway.
Yeah.
And we're taught to look at our bodies as deficient. If you look at a magazine or billboard or something, they're beautiful people anyway. They've been airbrushed, and then that's supposed to be what we pursue to look like. I mean, that's you can't do that. You can't look like that. Not even the people look like that in real life, right?
Right.
So, most people will look at their bodies and, like, especially women, put on makeup and pluck this hair and, cover that blemish. It's like, well, what does that ultimately do?
Mm-hmm.
It's not called makeup for no reason.
That's a soundbite right there. It's called makeup for a reason. I love that. Okay. So in working with your clients, people are coming to you with health issues. They're coming to you, and maybe they're a little misguided in how they treat themselves, how they take care of themselves. And I know that we're talking in a global sense, so I have listeners around the world who are listening to our conversation. So obviously you need to speak to your doctor in your specific area. But in general terms, is there some things that we can do to take better care of ourselves, take better care of our health, in addition to listening to our body telling us the messages that are really important and heeding those messages? What are some really basic things we can do this week to improve our health, improve our happiness? Because when you mentioned going on holidays and not knowing what to do with yourself, it seems like you go on a 1-week holiday, you spend the first 3 days trying to slow down, and then you finally get like a day, and then you have to gear yourself back up to go back to work. So really you're getting 1 day out of a week for yourself. Mm. How do we do better in life? What are some of your suggestions for us?
I think the one, if I have one thing I could give a person to use as a practice, it's gratitude, right? The moment you can step into gratitude is generally the moment that you have enough. You can stop striving. You can stop pursuing, right? And do we have something to be grateful for? Absolutely. We can be grateful for our eyes that they can see. We can be grateful for our hands. They can cook a meal or, pat your pet. We can be grateful for hot water in the shower. We can be grateful for food on our table. We can be grateful that we have a home to live in. Like, if you have those things and you're not living in a war zone, you're better off than like the vast majority of people on the planet, right? Like in our society, we live such, rich lives in that way, such comfortable lives, and yet we're perpetually unhappy, right? So that's possibly the easiest practice for physical, emotional, spiritual, mental well-being, right? My recommendation is start a gratitude book and write out by hand in the page at least 3 times. I am grateful for something. I am grateful for because I am grateful, writing the I'm grateful then becomes an actual affirmation as well. And the magic of gratitude is that the more grateful you are, the more you will have to be grateful for. Yeah. It's almost like you open up the door for more blessings to come your way. The universe loves a grateful heart.
Mm.
You know, if you're grateful for what you've got, it goes, okay, well, they can handle this. I will give them some more blessings. And it also shifts your lens of perception. So my own experience is, so I started gratitude as a practice about 20 years ago. My own perception is that now when things get tough, and they do, I'm actually grateful because I know, well, either I'm happy and I'm grateful for that, or I'm about to step into a new, bigger, happier, more magnificent version of me, which right now is unpleasant, but I know it'll be very worth it at the other end. And I'm grateful for that then, you know? So it's, if you practice gratitude, literally your life will get better, you know, easily and effortlessly and very quickly.
That's such a simple thing to hear, but very difficult to execute and to live, right? But I love it. I love it.
It is a practice.
Yeah.
It is a practice. And I had a gratitude journal for, I think, a year or more. Like literally every day I would write in that gratitude journal, I am grateful for. And, you know, towards the end, it was, it was pages worth, you know, in just 10 minutes. When I started out, I wrote, I'm grateful for, you know, bullet point my dog, bullet point my husband, bullet point my house. That doesn't work. That's what I'm saying. Write down, I am grateful before every sentence. And that makes it so much easier. They say it takes about 30 days to, you know, start some new neural pathways and make something become a habit. So if you can take a month where you make this a conscious practice, then that's a really good start. Or even just give your water gratitude before you drink it. It will actually literally change the structure of the water that you're drinking so that it's more nourishing for you. And, you know, be grateful for your food before you eat it.
Right.
And same thing, you know, there's a lot of water in food, so that will change the water molecules in the food as well. And it will feel more nourishing. So it's really, really simple and it doesn't take a whole lot of time, really. But it will change your world really, really dramatically.
Gratitude seems to include the idea that what you have in front of you is a gift as well.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you didn't, maybe, yes, you went to work and you earned the money to buy the thing. You bought the meal, yes. But what you have in front of you is truly a gift. So appreciate the gift.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you know, some creature, you know, gave their life for you to have this. Like if you eat meat, there was some creature that died for that. I mean, they didn't have much choice in the matter, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't be grateful that the animal offered up its life for this food that you're eating. Or, you know, if you're eating vegetables, like a lot of vegetables died in the process of becoming your food as well.
Yeah.
And that's the cycle of life. But if you can eat your food with gratitude, then you're actually giving back that, getting a bit esoteric now, but you're actually giving back your energy to the creatures that are feeding you. And it also means that we don't take for granted that that's going to happen as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not so inwardly focused. You're focused on what's in front of you and being gracious and and being grateful for what's in front of you. I love that.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any tips from your point of view for new authors? People that are writing their books, they're thinking, they're listening to your story, they're listening to you on the podcast, and it's like, I would love to be an author one day, but I don't know where to start. What would you say?
Just start writing. Like literally just start writing. Sit down and put pen to paper or finger to keyboard and just write what you have. Like if you approach it like the second book and third book that I've got together, you know, where I just wrote down these little things as they dropped in. And then I printed them all out and there were so many of them. And I started going, oh, well, that's actually about this and that's about that. So there's actually two separate books in this, you know, and then it was just a matter of taking all those ideas and all those snippets and then weaving them together so that they would make sense. And, you know, the other thing is have fun with it. You know, like if you're not having fun with it, there's no point.
Right.
Like in my books, the second one in particular, you know, like I've got poems in there that I've written and I've got artwork in there that I've drawn and I've got, quotes from other people in there, and it's all about making it a richer experience. And it's fun collecting those quotes. Yeah. And it's fun to kind of put them where they need to go. And I love drawing. So it's really nice to know that my drawings and the energy that they have, even if it's going to be black and white, are going to be there for the person reading the book to enjoy. Right. It's literally, like if somebody wants to be an author, there is going to be an idea for a book that's with them. And the only way you can get to manifest it on the page is actually just by sitting down and writing. And personally, I kind of write when I have the time and the space for it. So, I mean, I'm really blessed because I have arranged my life in such a way that I do have afternoons where I'm just by myself, and that's my time when I write. But I don't make it a discipline thing. If I'm not writing, I'm not writing. It doesn't matter. I mean, there might be other people who need to set times. Okay, so Mondays between 8 and 10, I write. And that might work for them, but that certainly wouldn't work for me. So, yeah. Just however you need to, yourself, you need to run your life, do it that way, but just start writing. That's all that's required. And the more you write, the more ideas will drop in.
Excellent. You mentioned that you found a new publisher that's helping you with your books. What about this publisher in particular was attractive to you as a writer?
She came recommended by a lady I know who writes books that are similar to mine, or I think she's got one book out. So she wrote a book that's in the same genre. So I guess self-empowerment book. And she told me about this author, this publisher, and how wonderful the experience of publishing was. I had probably just been moaning to her about what my experience had been like, which wasn't all that pleasant. So I think to find a publisher, it really is a matter of take your time. Don't go with the first person that says, yeah, I'll publish for you. And if they call you incessantly until you pick up the phone to spruik whatever it is they've got, that's probably a bit of a red flag. So I would definitely hesitate to be engaging with somebody who approaches me that way again. And there is such a thing. If you're a new author, you are not particularly likely to get a contract with a big publishing house, unless you have an agent, is my understanding. But there are hybrid publishing houses where, it's like a traditional publishing house, but it's also, you contribute towards the publishing of your book, which means they've got skin in the game, right? Publishers got skin in the game.
Right.
To make it a successful book. So, I'm certainly having a much better experience with that kind of publishing than with what's essentially self-publishing through a publishing house.
Yeah. So what I've noticed from you is your editor was word of mouth, your publisher was word of mouth. So,
yes.
So I'm seeing a theme there. I'm pretty good at picking up on themes. So that's why I ask in the podcast from your perspective as an author, because you are demonstrating word of mouth that could possibly help somebody else. So that's kind of why I was asking is I want to encourage that author that's not sure where the next step is. Having somebody on with now 3 books, it's kind of nice to have your perspective because you've learned lessons. You've seen things and you're like, if I give another choice, I'm going to go in this direction now. So we can learn a lot from you just by watching your journey as an author. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, it is quite daunting when you first have your book and you've got no idea how to bring it to the world, literally. But I didn't. I did not know how to get this thing published, and I think sometimes there's a bit of a learning involved in it as well. So you kind of know the things to look out for and not to do. So if you do have friends who have written books, or I don't know if there's forums or Facebook pages or something like that, that might be a place to go. But I would definitely like what I did with the second book is I submitted my manuscript to 2 different hybrid publishers, and they both came back saying they were wanting to publish it, which was really nice endorsement because it meant that there are two different people who actually saw commercial potential in it. So that would probably be my recommendation. Try to submit your manuscript to hybrid publishers, rather than trying to go in the self-publishing route. I mean, if you want to do it really cheaply, then you can self-publish, right, through places like Lulu Books and things like that, where you literally upload your work and you do your own graphics, and then off you go and you're published author, and that's not particularly expensive. But and if you have a really big network and you can get your book out that way, that's brilliant too. Yeah.
Great. Iris, that's great information. I appreciate you sharing that. Again, that's going to help many people listening. Before we go, I it's like getting close to 7 a.m. for you now. Thank you again for doing this. Again, where does everyone find you? We want to get book updates. We want to know where to get the books, all that great information. Where do we send people, Iris, so they can be in touch with you?
Well, there's my website, which is just irisangellys.com. And it's getting revamped at the moment. So the course is going on there, and there's going to be links to, where to buy the book as well.
Good.
Books are going to be on Amazon and Booktopia. If you are interested in workshops, then the best place is probably my Facebook page, which is called Passion to Thrive. And, you don't have to be in the same part of the world as me to do the workshops. I do them on Zoom, as well as in person. And I do have a Facebook, like Iris Angellys as well, but I'm not particularly involved with that one. And also have a YouTube channel that's called Iris Angellys, and there's a ton of material there, different meditations and talks and poems and all sorts of things too. Initially I set that up because for the first book, Passion to Thrive, there's a meditation that goes with each archetype so you can get familiar with them in that way.
Yes.
So that's what that started with, but there's a ton of material on that now for people to enjoy and check out and benefit from.
Beautiful. Love it. It's great. I really appreciate you taking time, Iris, to be a part of the podcast again, and to give up a portion of your morning to do so. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your story. I do have listeners in Denmark. I have listeners in Spain. At the end of the podcast here, I don't know if you would like to say hello to our listeners there, because they're listening and going, hey, I think I know this person. Would you like to give them a greeting at all for my listeners in Denmark and Spain?
Okay. Well, in Danish and Spanish?
Sure. Yeah. We'll just make them go, oh my goodness, they're speaking to me.
Okay, så Danish først. Hej alle sammen, jeg håber, I har det godt, og jeg håber, I nyder tilværelsen. And Spanish. Buenos días a todos. Os deseo que todo vaya muy bien. And we'll add in a German one too, just because I can. And say, liebe Leute in Deutschland, ich hoffe, dass es euch gut geht und ich wünsche euch alles Gute.
So now we just made a bunch of people very happy. So thank you for doing that. And for me, I generally struggle with English language. So the fact that you can do that, I'm totally impressed. And again, I love the combination of all the different cultures and the languages that you have at your disposal. That is a superpower. So
it is.
Yeah, it is. So thank you for sharing. Yeah, thank you for sharing and being part of the podcast. Again, you have this great smile for such an early morning period of time. I don't know how you did it, but you were great on the podcast, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for doing what you do, David. It's
thank you.
Really special. Yeah. Very special for authors to be able to come and speak to you in this way. Yes.
And thank you, Iris, for being open for that download of information and writing these books, because you are just responding and being a good servant with the information that you've been provided. So thank you for being willing to do that and share your stories with us.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. thanks for being part of the podcast again. Appreciate you investing time in the show and you for listening this far. Thank you. One thing to keep in mind is we are looking for help and some support for the podcast. If you are able to help support our show, our little podcast show here, we can go over to livingthenextchapter.com and all the instructions will be there to help support the show. It takes about $30 to $40 a month to do this, just for the hosting and all of that other stuff that we pay for. But if the show is giving you any value and you're enjoying what's happening here, would love any kind of support that you can offer. That would be great. And you being here and sharing the show helps us grow. Helps us get great new authors on the show, connect with other listeners, and build community. So whatever you can do to share this show today, I really appreciate it. Thank you for being here for Living the Next Chapter, and I can't wait to share the next one with you. Talk soon. Have a great day.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.